difference would have been used for. But, when you get into things, anybody who's been around for a little while knows that it's always far more complicated than what it seems like on the surface.
Absolutely.
You just alluded to that. And I have absolute, people, that silly article that came out in Forbes, the guy that wrote that thing.
I'm looking at it right now. It's called Ship of Fools by Mark Tatch and Miriam Gottfried.
Is that the one in Forbes?
Yep.
Yeah. He called me a couple of times, and he was just so, as a journalist, you try to get the truth.
Sure. That's why I'm asking you.
Yeah, well, he was trying to get me to say that Tommy was unreliable, or that Tommy, probably stole the gold, or probably secreted it somewhere, put it in Swiss bank accounts or whatever. You could tell where he was angling on this thing. It was very lopsided, and I haven't talked to any of the investors since the book came out.
This is an incredible story of a terrible tragedy, an incredible series, really, of discoveries. An eccentric engineer, marine engineer, that loves to learn and goes for it and gets himself in all kinds of difficult life challenges every step of the way. What are the lessons from the public from having written this book? Your insights into the lessons from this venture on all the aspects of it. Even the fact that Tommy Thompson is now very difficult to get a hold of, or impossible to get hold of, and that there's still this embittered feeling and unfinished business with what happened. Do you think there's a way to salvage or to restore what happened? Because the venture was an incredible, exciting adventure.
Well, I tell you, I'm a big believer in karma and doing what's right, and what goes around comes around, and all that kind of stuff. I think, again, the older you get, you see that in every circumstance, just telling the truth is by far the best thing to do, not because you're being a nice person. It goes way beyond that. It just comes back to do good things for you. And I think that the original lawsuits in federal court by these groups, this group of lawyers in New York that represented the insurance companies, should never, ever have taken place. These guys had no right to the gold, and the judge decided the case on the federal trial level within 2 or 3 days, and it was simply finders keepers. It's been 130 years. You made no effort whatsoever to try to discover this. It was found in 8,000 feet of water. It required technology on the cutting edge. There was a huge risk to life and capital, not to mention time and effort and giving up your life. And you did nothing. And so all of this belongs to Tommy Thompson and his group. Mm-hmm. And then they appealed it, and I never have understood this decision. A lot of people do not. They study this in law school now. This decision by I think it's the Second Circuit, or maybe it's the Fourth Circuit. I'm sorry, I don't know, but the one that Norfolk would be in, that would be the appellate court at the federal level, which would be the next level. These lawyers representing the insurance companies, by the way, existed back in 1857. They claimed that they covered the loss, and that they were, the legal term is subrogated to the people who then lost the gold because they paid for the loss. But they had no records. And in subrogation, you have to prove that there was a loss. You have to prove that the loss was covered, that there was an actual policy, and you have to prove that you paid the loss. And they couldn't prove for the last two, and yet they were somehow allowed to. The Fourth Circuit looked at this whole thing and said, well, it's not really abandonment. They never abandoned the gold because they used a term something like there must be overt abandonment. And no one to this day knows what overt, how can you abandon something overtly? You would just go out and pronounce, I guess, that if anybody happens to find your gold later, you don't want it. And that, of course, is absurd. And I think it was a 2-1 decision. There was a scathing dissent, and it was sent back to the court again. And this went on. It lasted for 10 years in federal court. It cost millions of dollars. And it was all over with, it went back to the same judge the second time, and it was under the law of salvage. And the law of salvage looks at 6 or 7 factors, some of which I've just mentioned, like risk to life, risk to capital, difficulty, all of these things, time involved. And then it tries to award something that's fair, so that if somebody loses something at sea, and you pick it up and bring it and put it back into commerce, then you're going to be aiding commerce. You want to encourage people to do that. Well, when that was over, Tommy's group got about 93%, and the insurance companies got 7%. But then there was wrangling over, is that 7% of the gold, or is it 7% of the value of the gold, which made a huge difference. Because if it was of the gold, then Tommy or the insurance companies could go out and sell all the gold at some artificially low price.
Absolutely.
This is gravy to them. And then they would set an artificially low floor for the value of the other 93%. So there was this big haggling over that, and in the middle of that, the judge died.
Oh, my God. This is a motion picture.
Yeah, it is. And anyhow, that went on. But as it turned out, the amount of money that the law firm spent, and this was all just contingency for them, meaning that if they didn't recover anything, they didn't get anything. And so this was just going to be a big boondoggle for them. So it turned out, though, that they spent so much money prosecuting this thing that they lost. They lost millions of dollars, and the firm imploded, and the lawyers left and quit. And that's what goes around comes around.
Absolutely, how beautiful.
They should never, ever have brought that lawsuit. But that I think, this dragged it out for another 10 years. Tommy had to shut down all the scientific operations. He couldn't take any more scientists out there. They wanted to take kids out there. They wanted to wire it up to have teachers in the classroom and people out there on the ship. And they had all kinds of grand plans there that they had already started to implement. But they couldn't do it because of these lawsuits, and other people started suing. Now, the investors, I have to be really honest with you, Kim, which I have been all along, by the way, but I don't understand why the investors have not received something. I don't understand that either. It doesn't compute with me. But I do know it's been extremely complicated. They've been fighting over 200 lawsuits. Some were just dismissed summarily, but it's been very difficult for that reason. And they have to worry about more people going out to the site and trying to steal stuff off of it, and it's been very difficult.
Did they pull up the ship?
No. They brought up the ship's bell. They found trunks. One of the most beautiful pieces in the whole story is there were 2, unlike Titanic, where they faked all of the characters, in the movie and all that stuff. There were newlyweds on the ship, and it went down, and they got her off, and she wasn't going to leave unless he could leave with her in the lifeboat, and he said, I'll be in the next lifeboat, and of course he knew there wasn't going to be another one. That was the last lifeboat, and so the ship sinks, and he goes down with the ship, except that he was one of very, very few men who was rescued.
Wow.
Like a little sailing vessel coming through at 2:00 in the morning.
Wow.
And so they were reunited a week later, and they were a wealthy couple from San Francisco, and entrepreneurs out there during the gold rush. Ansel Easton sold furnishings to the steamships. It would be like the guy taking the eggs up in the Sierra Nevada and selling them for $3. Those are the guys that made the money. But they were reunited in this fabulous love story ending, and later when there were all these artifacts were out in the debris field, in this 10-acre debris field, and they had seen this one trunk. It was a fairly large trunk, and they circled it the first year, and they didn't want to touch it till they could recover it properly. And they developed a method for doing that. So they recovered the trunk, and they brought it back, and they they worked with people at Ohio State University in Columbus who were experts on bringing something back out of salt water. It had to be kept at a certain temperature